come on here and do a mini training about something I see happen a lot to new entrepreneurs, to older entrepreneurs that has happened to me. And it's a concept that has made me a lot of money. It's something I coach on a lot in the mastermind with my clients because I really believe if I can get them to see this and help them with this, that it's really going to move them forward quickly. I think that this concept seems very simple, but be careful because it's not easy to do, and if you really start focusing on this the way I'm gonna tell you to, you could have completely different results by the end of the year, okay? So, here's what I wanna talk about. You guys like my little diagram? I wanna talk about this kind of concept of, like, we have an idea here with our little light bulb, okay? And then over here, we have execution, right? So, we have the idea, we're very excited, we're like, "Ooh, new idea," right? And then there's us actually doing it. But what happens in between there? That's what I want you guys to start paying attention to, and where I think the most leverage is for a lot of you is this little pink arrow. It's like between the idea and between execution, what is happening in that gap, right? We all have a gap. So nobody's having an idea and at the same time executing, right? There's the idea and then executing. So what is happening in that gap and is it useful to you? Really get curious about what ideas do you have? Where are you in the gap right now? Like some of you might have an idea for a book or for a YouTube channel or for a Substack. And so you've had the idea, then you haven't executed yet, meaning you're in that gap. So what is happening in that gap? And here's the key. How can we start focusing on shortening the gap? So I think a lot of people focus on how do I make sure I execute correctly? How do I make sure I do the right thing? How do I make sure I don't waste any time? But when you start thinking that, you end up spending longer in that gap. And our goal is to start shortening that gap because this is what I want you guys to really focus on. Here's the mindset shift. Are you ready? I want you guys to start focusing on instead of doing things the right way, getting practice, getting experience. This is what I really think the difference is between people making money and people not. Usually the people making money have a lot of skills. They are very skilled and usually they have a lot of experience, right? And the best way I know to help you guys build skills is through experience. And I would much rather you guys focus on getting experience instead of worrying about doing the right thing or doing the right way, right? You're going to waste time. You're going to do the wrong thing. Like there's no linear way to do this, right? I think we're really taught as employees like do what you're told, follow the SOP, follow the process, follow the step by step, go to school, do these things, and that's how you become successful. And that works in a lot of jobs and in a lot of fields and in a lot of schools. It does not work in entrepreneurship. Like there's no linear way. Every entrepreneur I know that's successful has just like a massive field of failure behind them. Okay. So if you're trying to avoid the massive field of failure, you'll never get to the other side where you want to be. So start looking at where have you had an idea that you haven't executed yet? Because that means you're in that gap. And then what do we need to start focusing on and thinking, right, to shorten that gap? One of the ones I gave you guys just now to focus on is I'm going to try to get experience. I just want to get practice, right? And for a lot of people, that will start shortening that gap. The other one I use a lot is like, I'm willing to be a beginner. I'm willing to be bad at this. I am just going to do a half ass version of this for now. And someday it'll be great. And I'm doing this with my YouTube channel right now. So I, for a long time, had this idea for my YouTube channel that it had to be really fancy. I needed like lights. I needed a better camera. I needed like to script my videos. I needed to edit it. And guess what that created? A very long gap between the idea and execution, right? So I was thinking in the gap, oh, it has to be this way, it has to be this way. And that gap just kept getting bigger and bigger, right? And I started noticing that. I was like, how do I start shortening this gap? I really need to get to execution so I can get the practice, so I can start posting on that channel. I have a lot of value I think I could put on that channel. How can I start shortening that gap? And I just started focusing on the only goal is to get the video done. The only goal is to get the video done. It doesn't matter if my hair is done, if my makeup is done. I'm filming this right now for you guys in my pajamas with no makeup on. And I have videos on my YouTube channel like that as well. I have videos that I have edited, I have videos that I haven't edited, right? But the whole goal is to shorten the gap. And if the goal is to shorten the gap, what was the things that were making the gap wider. It was my thinking about how I had to show up and how the content had to be that was creating this big gap, right? And when I started taking those thoughts and focusing on something else, focusing on getting it done, focusing on the output, right? That helps me a lot too. Shorten this gap is like focusing on the output, making the output or the quantity the goal. So instead of it has to be this way, it has to look like this, it's like one video a week. That's the goal, right? Just one video a week or whatever it is for you. We do this a lot in the 100 post challenge in the mastermind. They're doing the 100 post challenge right now this month. They do a different 30-day challenge every month. But the whole point of it is like if you have to post 100 times in 30 days, you'll learn how to shorten that gap because you just don't have time, right, to be there. So the other thing you can do is just give yourself less time to be in the gap, give yourself a deadline, and just really start paying attention because it's going to be different. That gap is going to be different for all of us, right? For some of you, it's like, I need to take more courses. I need to learn more about X, Y, and Z. I need to do more research, right? I need to watch more videos. That's like widening your gap. You just want to pay attention of like, where am I in the gap and what am I thinking? What would I need to focus on instead to start shortening that gap? And here's where I think it's a lot of leverage for you guys is think about if you do this with everything in your business all year. You're just like, how do I shorten the gap? How do I shorten the gap? How do I shorten the gap? Idea to execution, idea to execution. You're going to execute your face off if you do that. And by the end of the year, you're going to have produced 4 times, 5 times, 10 times as much as somebody who's just in that gap, in that gap, in that gap, and it just keeps getting wider and wider, right? A lot of times when we start thinking like, "Oh, I need a special light for my YouTube video," right? That widens the gap. But then it's like we keep going, right? We're like, "But I also need a camera, and I also need to learn the script, and I also need to take this course," and it just keeps going and going, right? Really start focusing on shortening the gap, shortening the gap. Watch your brain, right? Our brains are programmed to conserve energy. So they're going to keep putting things to widen the gap because guess what? If they widen the gap, they don't have to do any of the work on the execution. They don't have to sit down and do the part that feels like algebra, the part that feels uncomfortable, the part that feels scary, right? Brains are designed to conserve energy and keep you comfortable. We want them to do that for survival, but we don't need to do that in entrepreneurship. And so your brain is going to keep trying to tell you we should be in the gap, we should be in the gap, we should be in the gap. Focus on how you need the light, focus on how you need to take the course. Let's widen the gap, right? Because that conserves it energy. It doesn't have to do any of that energy on the execution side. So this is the challenge I have for you over the next week, right? I'm going to be teaching this in the Massive Action Accelerator. I would love to hear about your guys' experience with it this week. We're going to be going deeper into it in that workshop. Just think about where are you in the gap? What ideas do you have? You could even write them down. What are my ideas that I haven't executed on yet? And just notice like all of those is where you're in the gap, right? And pick one. Pick the one that you're most compelled to act on. Again, I don't even care which one you guys pick. A lot of people are like, how do I know which idea to pick? I don't even care, right? Because my goal as an implementation coach and a business strategist is to get you to get the skills you need to be successful, not to execute on the right idea. If you try to execute on the right idea, this gap is going to keep widening forever. I promise you that. I've coached hundreds of people on this stuff. You got to focus on just getting the skills, getting the experience. So if you pick any of them on the list and execute on it, you're going to be getting more practice and you're going to be getting more experience. And I'm like, I need for a lot of people, like for a lot of you, I need like hours under your belt. I need like time in the game. Like you need experience, right? And that's my job as a coach and as a business coach is to try to help you get more experience, right? And so one of the best ways I think you can do that is by shortening this gap. I hope that this was helpful for you guys. Come to Massive Action Accelerator if you want to learn more about this. It's going to be free. It's free for a very limited time, and then he'll go live in the Becoming Boss Mastermind with the rest of my training. But I try to do free training for the community. I'm going to try and start doing one once a month. We'll see how that goes. I'll do some more though. We'll do at least one. We do at least one free training a quarter. So come to the Massive Action Accelerator. Let's all work on this together. I'll give you some more tips and some more strategies about how to shorten this gap. And like I'm saying, the compounding effects of that, of being someone who's able to shorten that gap, able to shorten that gap, able to shorten that gap, you're going to get so much further faster than if we're in that gap all year long. And it's taking us hours, days, weeks, months, like in that gap, that's just costing you. It's just costing you experience. It's just costing you practice. And all of those things end up costing you money. So let's all focus on shortening the gap. I'll see you guys at Massive Action Accelerator. Bye, guys. I hope you love my pajama pep talk.